Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mapping the Dance World podcast. This week's dancer was born in South Africa, yet at the age of 16 was offered a scholarship to study at the Royal Ballet School. After finishing her studies, she went on to work with the Cape Town City Ballet 3.5 years, until returning to the Royal Ballet and working with them for 13 years. During this time, she worked her way up to being a soloist, performing such roles as Clara from the Nutcracker. She then retired in 2014 and lives in Australia. She's an amazing teacher, and I'm so grateful she's here today. Say hello to Iohna Lutz, now Iohna Mercer. So how are you, Iohna?
Hello, Angus. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad. So let's start off from the beginning of your journey. So you were 4 when you started ballet. Why did you get started?
I was always that little kid in the back of an adult ballet class prancing around while my mom was trying to stay fit. And eventually the ballet teacher just said, you know what, you should probably get this kid into a class of her own. And that's how I started. So, from a very young age, my parents took me to the theatre. From a very young age, I would just dance on classical music that my parents would be putting on at home. So just living out in that world, I was familiar with it and loved it from an early age.
So I think the really interesting thing about your story is you were at the Prix de Lausanne and you got offered a place to Royal Ballet. That's the Royal Ballet School, sorry. That's kind of like everyone's dream. So how did that happen? What was the kind of process of that?
Yes, well, you must remember that in a life very different from your own, before emails and DVDs and podcasts, if you entered the Prix de Lausanne, you had to physically go to be able to be part of the competition. So I remember my teacher having a meeting with my parents actually, and telling them that she thought I would maybe have a chance of finding a scholarship if I went. She believed in me, and that was really wonderful. But we basically had, a couple of months to get ready for it. I was at that time at a vocational ballet school. It was like a high school that could give you 2 hours of ballet class a day, and then you do your maths and your English and your science and all that stuff. There'd be kids doing drama, there'd be kids doing music, there'd be kids doing art, and then there would be the ballerinas. So that's what I was doing during the day, and then the evenings I'd be doing machaketti. So in the midst of all that, this teacher found me and thought I showed some promise, and my parents were brave enough to say, yeah, have a go. So yes, at the age of 16, I went to Switzerland, and it was a wonderful experience. I was very naive. This was the days before you'd have Zoom and Skype and an iPhone. So you really left your parents behind, and off I got on the plane with my teacher, who kindly came with me. And there was this amazing week in Switzerland where you saw these beautiful dancers from all over the world performing. And we did class and we did contemporary, and you managed to get your solo on stage. And so there wasn't this vetting process first of sending in your DVD, and then if you get picked, then you could, get to the semi-final and final. And so I was lucky enough to be in the semi-final. And Dame Mill Park, who was one of the judges, I think just took a special liking to me, perhaps because I was so tiny, and she maybe saw something of a Royal Ballet dancer in me, decided to offer me a scholarship. Even though I didn't get to the final of the competition, she offered me a scholarship anyway, which was wonderful. And, without that generosity, I think I would have probably continued dancing. I would have had a career, but it wouldn't have taken that particular trajectory at that time. So that would have been in February. I returned to London in that what would you say, call it autumn, September, and started in the upper school, which turned out to be a life-changing and wonderful experience. yeah, I mean, that was kind of the pre-Lausanne little story. And my life has in many ways taken those extra little curves along. But that kind of makes me the person I am today. Even those curveballs, the things that were really hard and sometimes heartbreaking, they taught me a lot, and they it gives you that extra bit of grit to get through the tougher parts of life.
So you talk about these curveballs. Can you kind of maybe allude to, I don't know how personal some may be, but can you maybe talk about one or two, or maybe some of the lessons you learned from those kind of curveballs?
Well, first of all, as you all will probably feel, if you don't stay in your, neighborhood and you end up going to a different city, different country, different hemisphere, you're going to be away from your parents. You'll be away from your loved ones, from familiar ground. Sometimes even there'll be a language barrier. So for me, at least from Johannesburg to London, the time difference wasn't so bad, but it was still a big difference. It was a long distance. You couldn't just go home for the weekend. So, missing your family and being really homesick and having to find your feet very quickly. I came from a very sheltered little home, wonderful supporting mom and dad, but all I had to do was do my schoolwork and dance. I didn't have to know how to boil an egg, have a bank account, know how to take a train. And within this moment in time, I was in the middle of London, living in Barons Court. School was still in Trafalgar and Talgoth Road, and had to open up a bank account and buy food and make food and do my laundry. And I had not done any of that ever. So there was that aspect of life that was tough. And just especially the looking after, we were ill prepared at that point. There was no sports science. They didn't explain to you what to eat, what to do to nourish your body at that point. Not a whole lot. So a lot of us learned through trial and error. I was very tiny. Like, me, Angus, I'm not the biggest of people at this moment in time. So me, all of 5'1", I am giant next to what I was when I went to upper school. I was this tiny little 4'10" little kid, minute in every single way, tiny little package. And I just didn't grow. So by the time I finished upper school 2 years later, I was still 4'11". And most companies at that point, they wouldn't take somebody that small. The Royal Ballet would take some of the smallest people, and even then you had to be at least 5'1". You had to at least fit in the quarter ballet. So that was the first big curveball that was thrown at me, was my size, that I was so little. I auditioned left, right, and center in Europe and in England, and I would get tapped on my shoulder after bar because I didn't look how they wanted me to look. That was heartbreaking, and it was very, very tough to recover from that. But you know what? At the end of the day, that curveball, that size, also gave me opportunities to dance roles that if I was any bigger, I wouldn't have danced. So it
I was going to ask, you finished, you were talking about the finishing upper school. You then went to Cape Town City Ballet, and you worked there for 3 years. Was that a part of that being that they kind of said, you're not as tall, but we have roles and jobs for you? Like, I kind of...
I understand. The thing is, having gotten to the Royal Ballet School and watched the company, we were sharing the same building. So you were walking past the studios every day of your life, watching the company rehearsing. I was very lucky that as a student, from the very first year, I was picked for all the productions, because they used to always ask students to be covers, whether it was a snowflake in Nutcracker or an angel or this, that, or the other. There was always something to do, something to cover as a student. And so, you were immersed in this world. And then to be told, you're too small, come back if you grow, uh, was really challenging. Yes. And also, I couldn't force my body to get any bigger. What I then did do actually is that I went home and I stopped dancing for 6 months. I did like the odd evening class, but I answered telephones, I waitressed. I was at a loss as to how I was going. Like, there was no thought process. There wasn't even like how do I get back to Europe? What do I do? Just nothing. It was just almost like numbing. You almost don't want to think past the day because it's too hard to think of the fact that you might never dance, you might never get on stage, and that maybe the people that you thought would always believe in you just kind of had disappeared in the mist. Anyway, my mom, God bless her, said to me eventually, after all of this unhappiness, she said, why don't you just audition here in South Africa? And there were two options. There was the company in Pretoria and the company in Cape Town. And I had a lot of friends in Pretoria, but I think somehow feeling, I was there in London and I didn't get anywhere and I didn't make it. And you feel like a failure. You feel so kind of confused by what, you had your dream and you had your vision, and then it doesn't happen and you don't know how to change the vision to become something else. And I thought, I'll try for Cape Town. My grandma lives in Cape Town. It's a lovely spot. And I'll just see what happens. And so off I went, and they offered me a job. I went and did a class with a company for a couple of days, and the audition was on the Saturday, and I did class maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And by that Friday, Veronica Paper, was the director, came to me and she went, don't bother coming to the audition tomorrow. Just how soon can you start? And I was like, So I went home. I had my wisdom teeth taken out. So I was like, yeah. A chipmunk for a couple of weeks, and I just phoned. I said, I'll come back as soon as the swelling's down. and so I drove down with my dad with a suitcase in the back of a little mini Cooper, all the way down. I think we drove 80 kilometers an hour all the way down from Joburg to Cape Town, and so there my journey started. And I think what was just heartwarming and affirming was that somebody saw something in me that was still worth picking. After that horrible sense of rejection, that you were not good enough, you were not big enough, that somebody didn't care, they took you anyway. And the funny thing that happened in that period is that my body did grow, and it not much, but 2 inches is still enough for it to make a big difference. And everything just matured. My body grew and it got bigger, and I got I had a much better understanding of how to look after my body as well. And all of that was important. I think at that time when I was in the Royal Ballet School, I wasn't eating enough. I didn't have the nutritional understanding of what my body needed if it was going to do that many hours every day. And I think often that's what happens when you leave home and you're not prepared, is that you don't actually look after your body in the way that it needs to be looked after. My bone density was low when I got home. Eventually, we had to address that. We had to address my hormones. We had to address so many things. So health-wise, things happen for a reason. And me being taken out of that place in life and put back at home for 6 months gave my body the opportunity to get healthy. And the time that I had in Cape Town were some of the happiest times that I had. I made great friends. Cape Town is a beautiful spot to work at. I danced wonderful roles. The company was wonderful to me. I had a blast. I would probably have stayed. But I had this yearning for London. I don't know, but London is very infectious, and it's one of those places that you can never, it crawls under your skin and then it stays there. and I was longing for my life in London. So I went back for a holiday just to go and see friends, not really even thinking about auditioning because I was doing really well in Cape Town. I was, dancing lovely things, and it wasn't at the forefront of my head of I have to get out. Not at all. I was just there for a holiday, and because I love London so much, I kind of just had a great time. And I asked Monica Mason at the time if I could come and do class. I didn't even take point shoes with me. Like, I just said, it's holidays. Can I come and do class? She went, yeah, sure. And I walked in through the door and she went, oh, you've grown. I'm like, yeah, I did. I did grow. Grew 2 inches in 3 years. Thank you very much. Yes. And now, at this point, I'm 21. And I can understand why they didn't think I was going to grow, because I left and they were like, she's done growing. She's just too little. But I think that break from the severity of the amount of exercise just gave my body the time to change. Anyway, so there I was, did a couple of classes, and she eventually just called me where I was staying, and she just went, I would like to offer you a contract. And I was like, so, again, things happened at times when I didn't expect them. And often when you are fighting for something, I always found in my life when I was really fighting, things wouldn't happen. And when I actually just let go, the right things would happen at the right time. But I had to be prepared for it, and things had to be there in the right time.
So you entered the company. Now, I talked to, in a previous interview, I talked to Victor Zariala. I talked a little bit about the Scottish ballet, but could you run through how do the ranks, at least when you were in the company, how did they work in the Royal Ballet? So how did the ranks go up?
Yes, so there was artist, first artist, soloist, first soloist, principal. And that hierarchy was, sometimes an artist would be picked to do a solo. Sometimes a soloist would be picked to do a principal role. Sometimes a first artist would get the chance to do a soloist or principal role just because a choreographer loved them, or somebody would come in to cast something and they said, I love that person, I'm going to use them. So it happened to me in Cape Town. I wasn't a soloist, but I got given wonderful opportunities by people who would come to the company to teach something. I was very lucky. There's a guy called Yannick Shergan who looks after Chusango's ballets, and he came to Cape Town and he picked me to do configurations and Schubert Symphony. And I was, it was amazing to be doing a principal role at that young age. And it was such a beautiful ballet. And so this would also happen in the Royal Ballet. So, but, when you were an artist or a first artist, your job description was really quarter ballet. And you were sometimes put in that box, and then you had to really work hard to get out of that box of constantly just being in the quarter ballet line. And I think I was just so happy to get in that I didn't care which box they put me in as long as I was there. But, after a couple of years of working and slogging, and quarter ballet work in the Royal Ballet is very, very hard because you're on every night and there's long periods of rehearsals and it's tough. You wanted more, and you weren't always going to be given more. And you had to make peace with the fact that, are you okay with being at the Royal Ballet in whichever level that they decide you're going to be in, or do you want to go somewhere else? Some people chose to go somewhere else. Some people decided to stay.
So how did you move up the ranks of the ballet? Was it you do a performance, or you do a couple and someone say, hey, she's gotten a chance? Or was it, just constant grinding class? Like, kind of, how do you move up, or at least how did you move up?
It's funny. There was a little documentary that was made in the company years ago. I think it's probably now 15 years ago. It was called From Dreams to Reality. And it kind of followed a couple of people in the company, and I was one of them. And it was kind of this storyline of, oh, this girl's in the Court Ballet and she's not going to ever get promoted because that's just the way life is. And Stephen McRae was there, and he was like this young whippersnapper who was like, I'm going to get to the top come hell or high water because I know I'm good enough. And then there was little me, and I think I'd been working very, very hard, and I'd been given the chance to do many solo. Right by that point, I was still in the Court Ballet, but I had already done Clara. I'd done lots of little solo bits here and there, and you kind of feel like, oh, it's so close. But at the end of every year, when you get your interview, you always told, I don't really see it, and somebody else would get the promotion, and you kind of eventually just thought, they just don't see me as a soloist. I might get the soloist roles when, be a second cast or a third cast or a cover, and then somebody would get injured and you'd get on. But they didn't see me as a soloist. And then, you just keep slogging. And there were times of real frustration and unhappiness because you kind of felt, but I'm always good enough to be thrown on in that solo, but I never picked first time. And I would eventually, the one year I thought, you know what, I'm just going to write down all of the work that I've done and hand this note to my director, because I just don't feel like she's understanding how much work I'm doing. I'm working so hard, and it's not like I'm just doing the Court Ballet. I'm doing lots of solo things, and I'm covering for lots of soloists. So I went into my interview and I gave her the piece of paper, and she kind of, you kind of think they should know, but she's looking after 100 people. So she's got lots of other things to think about. And I guess it then took another year where in that interview, she finally went, yeah, okay, I'm going to promote you. So I didn't get promoted and then do the work. I did the work, and then I got promoted eventually. So I had to do it the long way around, the hard way, because again, like I was put in the box and I couldn't get out of the box. I had to kind of prove that I've already done the work, be fair. And some people, even from school, they will love somebody and they go, oh, that one is special. And they are destined for that trajectory to go up and through the ranks. And other people are not that natural fit for them. So you have a different way of getting to a position. Do you know what I mean? For me, it was years of hard work, sitting in the Court Ballet and having to mentally go, you can either hate to be standing here on stage. And there were nights when I would stand there crying, thinking, I hate this, I want to get out of the line. And then I had to eventually say to myself, you have a choice. You're at the Royal Ballet. You got here, either hate it and leave, but don't be bitter and waste the spot on stage. You have to realize that if this is it, if you will never get past this line, are you okay with dancing beautifully and happily in this line? And once I made that switch in my mind, I could then relax and forget about it all and just dance. And maybe that even changed the way I was dancing. And perhaps that is how I finally got my promotion. I will never know for sure, because it can't just be that little sheet of paper I gave her with all the work I'd done.
Maybe it was. Maybe it was.
Other factors, I imagine. I don't know. I never asked.
You're like, thank you, I'm going. Yeah. But
yes. No, I'm going before you change your mind.
So, what would you say were some of the highlights of your time at the Royal Ballet? I mean, what are some of the performances that really stick out?
Oh man, I had so many special moments, and not all of them were, me in the front. Some of them would have been me at the back, but being there for a very special occasion, like Darcy Bustle's final show of Song of the Earth was a beautiful moment to be there. I think my very first Clara performance would have been pretty special, right down to my last Clara, which I wouldn't have known would have been the last one. But I I loved and I performed and I appreciated and cherished every single nutcracker that I ever did. And I had lots of different partners that would have been my nutcracker, and I enjoyed every single. There was not one performance that I thought, well, that was rubbish. I loved them all. Whether I was dancing with Stephen or Ricardo or Justin or John, it's like they were Yvonne, like there were lots, because I was there for so long. I had lots of different opportunities to do it.
Yeah, I was just sitting there tthinking, like, those are quite some names, Iohna. Wow.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Just list them off casually.
Casually. No, I mean, I was very lucky. I think the other ballet that afforded me a huge amount of I just think admiration and feeling like I had some magic fairy dust on me was Meyerling, because my first Meyerling was with Irek Makhomedov, and I was his Stephanie for his last performance when he retired. So that was pretty special. I then did it with Ed Watson, and that was pretty special because Ed and I were at school together. And so Ed and I have grown up, and we have been, through many battles, at the same time in life. So that was pretty special. And I also managed to do Meyerling with Carlos Acosta, which in Japan, which was, another wonderful experience. I mean, you must remember the role of Stephanie in Meyerling is not a happy event. It is a vicious pas de deux, and I got severely injured from it every time. And then I would spend 18 months rehabbing my shoulders, and then Meyerling would come back into the rep, and I'd go, oh, there we go. My shoulders are going to get ripped apart again. And this happened 3 times in a row. Tear my shoulders apart, get better. Meyerling comes back, do it again, get better. Oh, here it comes one more time, get better. So Meyerling, I think, will always be a treasure for me. And then I think my other favorite ballet would be Month in the Country, which is Frederick Ashton. I used to watch it and kind of just wish and pray that I would have a chance to one day be in it, because it's such an exquisite piece of art. And finally I got the chance to do it, and I just absolutely loved every second of it, from pretending to play the piano, the music, costumes. The first time around I did it with Ivan Putrov and Alexandra Antonelli, and then the second time around it was with Alina Kojikaru and Federico Bonelli. So both sets of the cast was just, I can't explain it, but it's a special moment to treasure. I had the wonderful opportunity to work with many choreographers. Will Tuckett I will love forever, because Will picked me out of school to do the 1812 overture for a winter gala that the Royal Ballet did. So I was still a student, and I danced with Adam Cooper and Elizabeth McGorry, and Placido Domingo was the conductor. So that was pretty special. Years later, actually, no, Chris Wheeldon choreographed Schubertiad on me at the school performance. And then years later, full circle, I worked with him on DGV. I worked with him on Alice in Wonderland. So special, even, Kathy Marston was at school with me again, school friend who used to always choreograph on me because I was little and she could chuck me around. The boys could just chuck and, go crazy. And we had so many lovely, lovely moments. So I have highlights that go all the way back from when I was a little girl, right all the way up to the last point. And yeah, I guess I'm very lucky that I would have had so many happy memories. That there would be so many pieces that either were created on me or that would be classics that I could love. Like Swan Lake, I would love every act 4. Cinderella, I would love every time I did Cinderella, because Spring Fairy was such an insane solo to have to do. what else? Midsummer Night's Dream, being a super fairy and having to move so fast that you thought your feet were going to fall off. Working with wonderful, wonderful coaches and people who just were such experts in their field. So yeah, I'm just filled with real gratitude for everything I managed to be there at the right time.
I noticed that you didn't mention being a chicken as one of your highlights. Honestly, I thought that was a pretty good performance.
Yeah, the chicken. Well, the thing is, the chicken was the perfect role because you were covered in this giant costume, and the only people who could truly know who you were under all that would have been the ballet master. Anyone else in the audience would kind of go, I think that looks like Iohna's feet. I can't be sure. And you'd be done with your little dance within 10 minutes of the curtain opening. You'd literally be giggling inside that costume and sweating because it was so hot. It was just pure joy because there was nothing hard about it. And you got to go home after the interval because you were not in Act 2. So there was just, it was all positive.
So
and yeah, just it is funny that you could be that joyful for being a chicken. But I mean, I excelled at all roles that seem to be animal like or fairy like. I don't know. I did every single one of them that you could think of.
So
again, because of my size, probably.
I was gonna say you mentioned destroying your shoulders from the solo. Something I really haven't been able to talk to him about is what kind of injuries did you have over your career, and how did you do recovery for all of them and come back? Because I have had one or two injuries, and my experience has always been that it's pretty hard, and I couldn't imagine I assume it's harder in a company. Like what kind of
So I was very lucky as a student not to have had many at all. I think I pulled my hamstring and maybe had a couple of bad blisters. Cape Town, I was also very, very lucky. I had very, very few niggles. In the Royal Ballet, if I think of my whole term of dancing there, I was, again, very, very lucky. I was almost never injured. I had one stress fracture, one sprain, really bad ankle sprain, and a shoulder injury that was a recurrent one because it was something that happened in Meyerling. It was like a twist that would just always end up hurting the bursa within that shoulder, and then it would take ages to get better. So I was lucky. I was never out for more than a month, 6 weeks, and that would start my rehab. And I always would start with the Pilates. I would get coaching either by Monica or by whoever was doing the coaching at the time. So I was very, very lucky that my body managed to deal with the stress and the strain of the everyday. I think there was a big step up from Cape Town to the Royal Ballet just because the Royal Ballet did that many more performances. They went on these massive tours. The Corps de Ballet did so much more. I mean, I remember in Cape Town, if there was a performance that night, you'd be finished at 2, and then you'd have the afternoon to go to the beach, have a rest, have some dinner, and go to the theatre. In the Royal Ballet, you were working until 5:30, and the show was at 7:30. So in those 2 hours, you had to eat something, shower, get ready, break in your point shoes, and warm up again. Like, there was no time. And so that, I think, was a very different level of fitness that you had to maintain. I think, I know from what I see everybody else go through, I was very lucky that my body recovered well. It recovered quickly. And because I had learned how to look after my body, eat well, sleep well, just being kind to my body, it therefore kind of survived the onslaught of the everyday.
So it comes around to 2014, and in that year you retired. Why did you decide to? What did something happen in your life, or did you want to
So
move on? Or
yeah, well, it was like a major event of having a baby, and so I had Eiley in 2013, and whilst I was pregnant, I was very lucky that at that point the Royal Ballet School was just across the road in Covent Garden, and I had decided to do the teacher's course, the professional dancer teacher's course that the Royal Ballet School offers. And so while I was going through my maternity leave, so to speak, I could do the course, which turned out to be an absolute, godsend, because I managed to complete most of it and then only had to do the practical side of it once Eiley was born by the end of 2013. By the time she was 4 months old, I had to make serious decisions on what I was going to do with this little baby, trying to get back to work. And I think at that point, I had danced every role I was going to dance. I had enjoyed a very healthy body. I was lucky enough to have traveled all over the world with a wonderful group of dancers who were also my friends. So, life had been looking so good, and it's such a wonderful moment actually to say, you know what, maybe this is the point where I moved to the next phase of my life. And luck would have it, my husband got a job offer in Sydney, and we had toured to Australia once while I was in the company, and I remember loving Australia and thinking it was a great place. Never thought I would end up living here, and so these things just all aligned. There was this little baby, a job offer, a career that was stellar and wonderful, and had given me so much joy, and they just all fell in line to go, it's time. I knew I was going to walk away also with a piece of paper that was a pretty special piece of paper to get from the Royal Ballet School as a teacher. And so, finished my qualifications, packed up the house and the baby, and moved down under, as they say. And the first 2 years here, I just looked after Eiley. She was a wonderful, easy baby, and it was such a joy to be here in Sydney. But when she got to like 2.5, I felt like something was missing. Just for me, like, I think dancers don't realize how much of their own identity is in that ballet world. I think in the lockdown that we are going through at the moment, and this pandemic, I think a lot of dancers have felt it. They have had to make peace with the fact that they are humans and they are people in their own right, without the ballet being the essence of their life. You know what I mean? I struggled at that point because I didn't say goodbye to the ballet properly. I didn't get back on stage after I had Eiley. I left before I went back on stage. So yeah, that's how I came about being here in Sydney. It was just through a couple of wonderful life changes that just happened to be at that point.
So
yeah.
have you always had an interest in teaching, or was that something that kind of you discovered?
You'll find this funny because I had no interest in teaching at all when I was a dancer. And I so wish now that I had, because I would have become a much better dancer for it, because I learned so much about technique and the understanding of dance when I started teaching, which is such a tragedy because, I wish I had known then what I know now. But the best I can do is give the next generation all the things that I have found and that I'm finding, and hopefully spare you all the difficulty having to figure it out all through your life, that you start early. So no, I didn't really even think about becoming a teacher later on in life. And even the teacher's course at the time when I was doing it, I was like, why am I doing this? I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure I get what I'm doing here. And my husband just said, keep doing it, just get it done. When you need it, you'll know why. And he was so right, because when I then, after a 2-year break from ballet, like nothing, I didn't watch ballet, I didn't see it, I didn't speak it, I didn't look at it. I came out of that and started teaching a pointe class and a little bit of class, a little bit of rep, and all of this information that had been stored inside me just started coming out. And I found it so joyful to be able to be in a studio and help the new generation of dancers that are coming through. It's a joy that I didn't know I would have when I was going, you just don't, I didn't know that it would be that lovely. So I'm lucky that I really enjoy this second half of my life.
Yeah, and I'm very lucky that I managed to get taught by you, because one of the really amazing things for all those at home, Iohna's amazing ability is that you'll do a step and then she'll tell you in multiple steps how you could do it better. It's like this amazing ability that Iohna has to really kind of break it down. But I think we're coming towards the end, so I want to ask you a question. I asked everyone towards the end of the interview, do you have like a motto or almost like something that's always guided you throughout your journey?
I think on a personal level, for me, my spirituality is important because it grounds me and it gives me that sense of purpose. And I feel, especially when I look at my story and I hear myself telling my story, I feel like there was this, these moments that were so profound. I couldn't have made it up. I couldn't have been lucky that many times. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like God just put me in the right place, the right time, in certain times of my life that I had to be at a certain point, or I had to learn something that nearly killed me, but it gave me the opportunity to then learn what I needed to learn to get onto the next place. So for me personally, that is an important part of my life that grounds me and keeps me safe. I think my dad has always said to me, just do your best. And I even tell my daughter now that, you can strive for perfection, but you never get it, but you can always strive to do your best. And I think that is one of my mottos, is you can't be perfect, but you can always try your best. And then you've done all you can, and the rest is out of your hands. I think that's kind of where I sit.
So I'd like to thank you so much, Iohna, for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all those at home, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time.